My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 29, and at my sister's engagement dinner, my family handed me a gift box that said I was destined to die alone. The Hart dining room smelled like pine expensive wine and something rotten I couldn't name. Quinn giggled while I lifted the lid a last chance dating app membership for women over 30, and a glossy book about how to be happy when no one ever marries you. My mother sipped her Chardonnay and called it tough love. My father stared into his bourbon like I wasn't even there. What none of them bothered to notice was the ring already on my finger, or the fact that every lie in that room was being quietly recorded. But what they didn't know was that I'd turned this house into my own evidence locker. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 29, and this is the night my parents tried to laugh off my life, without realizing I'd come prepared to expose every quiet lie. I didn't always understand what it meant to be the wrong daughter. That truth didn't hit all at once. It carved itself into me slowly, scene by scene, moment by moment. Like frost creeping across a window I kept trying to wipe clear. The earliest memory that still burns is a dinner table. I must have been 10. Quinn was 7 already, the star of every room she walked into. The Hart dining room was always too bright, too polished, too quiet. The overhead chandelier cast these sharp little diamonds of light across the table, catching on the silverware, bouncing off the glass cabinets stuffed with crystal no one was ever allowed to touch. Mom set down a platter of roasted chicken steam, rising into the air. Garlic rosemary butter smells that should have been comforting. She didn't even glance at me before piling food onto Quinn's plate. "You need protein for ballet," she told her, smiling like a coach admiring her prize athlete. Then her eyes slid to me almost as an afterthought. "Liv, take whatever's left." There wasn't much left. Dad chuckled from the head of the table, sipping scotch, even though it was barely 6. "Can't keep up with your sister's energy, kiddo. Quinn's a little firecracker." Quinn giggled, swinging her feet under the chair. I scraped a spoonful of mashed potatoes from the bowl, cold by then, and swallowed the feeling that rose in my throat. I didn't know it then, but this tiny moment would become one of the first scratches in the glass between me and them, so small it was invisible but sharp enough to deepen with time. Flash forward 4 years. Middle school auditorium, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of gym floor varnish thick in the air. I'd stayed up 3 nights finishing my project's solar-powered garden lights made from recycled glass jars. I won 2nd place, not first, but still something I was proud of. They called my name. I walked up to the stage, heart-pounding hands, sweating, clutching the ribbon they handed me. And when I looked out at the audience, I saw my family. Mom was fixing Quinn's hair. Dad was bent over showing her how to use the zoom feature on their new camera. Quinn, wearing a sparkly pink dress, even though she wasn't part of the competition, posed like she was the one being honored. Not one of them had a camera pointed at me. After the ceremony, Dad finally snapped a photo of Quinn holding my ribbon just for fun. I laughed along because I didn't know what else to do. Looking back, I can hear the whisper of it, something inside me hardening. Learning to fold disappointment into silence. I didn't know it back then, but this would matter later. Years passed like that. Quiet cuts, little steals of attention, praises that always slid past me and landed on her. By 16, I was bussing tables at a local diner to earn my own money. The place smelled like burnt coffee and warm syrup, and my sneakers always stuck to the floor. On breaks, I'd sit by the employee entrance, sipping free soda from a paper cup, pretending I didn't hear the cook complaining about teenagers. I saved almost every tip in a jar under my bed, planning to buy a laptop for design school applications. One afternoon, I found the jar empty. I remember the metallic panic that shot through me. I tore through my room, checked the closet, the desk, the laundry basket. Nothing. When I confronted Mom, she didn't even look up from her magazine. "Oh, Quinn borrowed it," she said, flipping a page. "She needed spending money for the beach trip. We'll pay you back." They never did. I swallowed that too. But it carved deeper than I thought. Later that year, when Quinn breezed into my room wearing a new sundress bought with my tips and twirled like she was on a runway, I felt something inside me crack, just enough for light to slip through. A light I would learn to follow. "I didn't know you cared so much," she'd said, smirking. "It's not like you use money for anything fun." I laughed because that's what people pleasers do when they're breaking. College came next. I worked 2 jobs, slept 5 hours a night, ate ramen until my jaw hurt from the salt. But I got into a Colorado program for landscape architecture, a dream I didn't even dare say out loud to my parents. When I told them, Mom smiled politely like I'd just announced I'd taken up knitting. Landscaping, so gardening. Her voice held that tight, careful tone she used when she was trying not to sound dismissive. and failing miserably. Well, at least you'll always have fresh air, Dad added. It's a niche field, Liv. Don't expect a real salary right away. Meanwhile, they paid for Quinn to attend a fashion program in New York, $40,000 a year, plus a monthly cost of living stipend. They gave her a car. They gave me a suitcase and a ride to the bus station. I didn't know it then, but the way they dismissed my work would come back to haunt them, and help me, eventually. A few years later, during Thanksgiving break, I came home with handmade gifts, small sketches of gardens, herb bundles wrapped in twine, a photo book of Colorado landscapes. Quinn arrived late with designer bags announcing her brand partners had sent her early Christmas gifts. Mom squealed like someone had won the lottery. Dad insisted everyone gather in the living room while Quinn unboxed a diamond bracelet with dramatic flair. Quinn, sweetheart, this is dazzling, Mom breathed. When it was my turn to give gifts, they barely looked up. I handed Mom the photo book. She nodded, placed it aside without opening it. Smells like sage, she murmured like that was a flaw. They gave me a scented candle with the label half peeling off. I smiled. I always smiled. But inside something tightened like a knot, pulling itself smaller. I didn't know that years later I'd sit in a room full of these same people and watch their faces twist when the lies finally turned on them. And I definitely didn't know I'd marry Noah. That part was fate or maybe mercy. We met at a networking event in Denver on a night when rain fell sideways and the wind snapped my umbrella in half. I stood under an awning, dripping and freezing, trying not to cry. A man next to me stepped sideways, lifting his umbrella just enough to cover both of us. You look like you're debating whether to quit life entirely, or just the event, he said, half smiling. No, I muttered, shivering, just regretting everything I've ever done to end up here. He laughed, warm, genuine, same. His name was Noah Reed, cybersecurity analyst. Quiet, steady, eyes that saw people fully before judging them. A kind of man I didn't know existed. I didn't realize I was meeting the one person who'd helped me tear down the house I grew up in. We started with coffee in a cramped place that smelled like burnt beans and cinnamon, both of us pretending we weren't checking the time every 5 seconds. I told Noah about sketches and soil and how trees could frame a view the way architects used steel. He told me about firewalls and passwords, about how most breaches didn't happen because the system was weak, but because someone trusted the wrong person. That's the part that keeps me up, he said once, stirring cream into his coffee. It's never just code, it's always people. I didn't know it then, but that sentence would replay in my head the night my own family tried to overwrite my life. Noah was nothing like the men my parents nudged toward me at holidays. Their choices had firm handshakes, louder opinions, and the kind of smile that said they were already calculating the trade. Noah listened more than he spoke. He asked questions about my designs and remembered the answers. When he visited one of my first projects, a bare rooftop I'd turned into a small garden behind a Denver law firm. He ran his fingers along the railing and said almost to himself, "You built this assuming there'd be a tomorrow." I think that was the moment I fell in love. For a while, I tried to keep Denver and Boston in separate boxes. Denver was dirt under my nails, tracing lines in a notebook at midnight. Noah showing up with takeout and a spare hoodie. Boston was polished floors, the smell of expensive candles. Quinn's laughter echoing off high ceilings like a ringtone I couldn't turn off. The first Christmas I brought Noah to the Hart estate. Snow clung to the stone steps, and the house glowed like it had been staged for a catalog. Mom opened the door with a smile that stopped just short of her eyes. "So you work with computers," she said, tilting her head. "Quinn has a big tech sponsor this month, too. Maybe you two can collaborate." Noah shook her hand. "I try to keep people safe from the companies that sponsor Quinn," he said lightly. Dad laughed like it was a joke he didn't quite get. Quinn's gaze flicked over Noah Coatshoe's watch, taking inventory the way she did with products. That year, they gave Noah a leather wallet embossed with my father's company logo. They gave Quinn tickets to Paris for content. They gave me floral gardening gloves, the kind you buy at a supermarket end cap on impulse. I told myself I didn't care. I had my own life now, my own future. The wedding planning lived on our kitchen table in Denver, stacks of paper samples. A laptop half open, a shared spreadsheet full of half jokes and real decisions. We picked a small vineyard outside the city. Nothing flashy. Rows of vines, a view of the foothills, string lights we could hang ourselves. I obsessed over the invitations more than I want to admit. Thick cream cardstock, a green-gray ink that reminded me of eucalyptus leaves. I tied each one with a narrow ribbon until my fingers ached. When I wrote my parents' names, I slowed down, letting the pen dig a little deeper into the paper. "You sure you don't want to just call them Noah?" asked from the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching me seal another envelope. They're my parents, I said. Whatever else they are, they won't miss my wedding. I wanted that to be true so badly that I treated it like a fact. The vineyard smelled like warm grapes and cut grass on our wedding day. My dress was simple silk that moved when the wind did. Noah waited under a wooden arch wrapped with greenery I'd picked out myself. Our friends filled the chairs, their faces soft in the late afternoon light. 2 seats in the front row stayed empty. Little white cards rested on each one. Mom, Dad, my handwriting, my hope. Do you want to start? The planner asked quietly, checking her watch. We're already 15 minutes past. They probably hit traffic, I said, or a delay. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts, no we're running late. Just silence. We waited another 15 minutes. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. A kid dropped something and it clattered against the floor. Noah slipped his hand into mine behind the arch. We can do this with or without them, he murmured. I'm here, that's enough. I nodded, but my chest felt hollow, like someone had lifted out the center of me and left the shell standing. We got married with those chairs still empty. That night, when the last song faded and the lights dimmed, and our friends finally left for their hotels, we sat on the edge of the hotel bed in our wedding clothes, my feet aching, his tie loose. Only then did we check our phones. One text from my father. Sorry, kiddo. Last-minute crisis on a project. Proud of you. Congrats. No mention of my name. No mention of Noah's. No explanation. Just crisis and a thumbs-up emoji glowing blue on the screen. I stared at it until the words blurred, and the little icon looked like a tiny mocking fist. I'm sorry, Noah said, his voice quiet. You deserved better. I nodded and swallowed it the way I'd swallowed everything they'd ever done to me. The 8 months after the wedding felt like living inside a fog, thin enough to see shapes moving, thick enough that nothing made sense. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that families messed up sometimes, that not getting a call or a gift or even a simple, "How was the ceremony?" didn't mean what I feared it meant. People got busy. People forgot birthdays. People missed flights. But 8 months is a long time to stay silent about your daughter getting married. The first escalation began quietly, with a gut feeling I tried to ignore. It was a Tuesday morning in April when I finally checked the old FedEx tracking number from the wedding invitation batch. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the silence had stretched too thin. Maybe Noah's soft patient, "You deserve answers." Liv had finally cracked something in me. The page loaded slowly, circles spinning, and then delivered signed for by Q. Heart time, 10:22, AM location, Heart residence front door. I stared at the signature, the looping Q, the sharp tail of the H. Quinn's handwriting. No doubt. I told myself it meant nothing. People signed for packages all the time. Maybe she didn't recognize what it was. Maybe she put it on the kitchen counter and someone else misplaced it. Maybe, but my throat tightened, because every maybe tasted like a lie I had trained myself to swallow. That afternoon I called my mother. Mom, did the invitations ever arrive? Her voice drifted through the speaker, smooth, composed, and chilly as always. Invitations. What invitations? My wedding invitations, I repeated slower this time. The ones I mailed in February. She made a soft, dismissive noise. Oh, honey, you should have followed up if you didn't hear from us. You know how unreliable delivery services are. You can't expect us to know every package that comes through the door. But they were signed for, I said. By Quinn. A long pause. Then I don't recall anything like that. You're probably remembering wrong. The words didn't hit me like an explosion. They hit like a quiet pressure, the kind that tightens slowly until you can't breathe. Gaslighting comes softly at first. Whisper light, reasonable. But reasonable people do not forget their daughter's wedding invitations. When I hung up, Noah was standing in the kitchen doorway watching me with a look that hurt to see. What did she say that I must be remembering wrong? He exhaled, leaning both hands on the counter. The tendons in his forearms stood out tight. That's not forgetting, Liv. That's rewriting. I didn't know it then, but this was the first real crack in the dam. The second escalation wasn't a call. It was a post. One night in early May, while scrolling through Instagram in bed, I saw Quinn's story. A champagne toast, a sparkling ring, a caption that read, "First bride in the family, 26, and living the dream." Couldn't be more grateful for Mom and Dad's love and support. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. I zoomed in, then out, then in again. Comment after comment gushed about how glamorous her engagement was, how lucky she was, how her parents must adore her, how some sisters must be jealous. I closed the app so hard my thumb hurt. Noah looked up from his laptop. Something happened. She said she's the first bride, I whispered. Like I never existed. His jaw clenched. Liv, it's fine, I said quickly, even though my eyes stung. I don't care about what she posts. But I did, because it wasn't just a caption. It was a rewrite, a deletion, a version of reality with a me-shaped hole cut out. 3 days later, I visited Boston for a short work trip and decided against every warning bell in my head to stop by my parents' house. Maybe I wanted to see their faces. Maybe I wanted them to see mine. Dad opened the door, looking surprised for half a second before rearranging his expression into polite indifference. Liv, didn't know you were in town. I sent a message in the group chat, I said. Ah, haven't checked it. He stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled like lemon polish and the faint ache of memories. The entryway chandelier glowed in a soft gold haze above us. Mom walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a linen towel. Oh, she said. You should have told us you were visiting. I did. Another small pause, thin as tissue paper. Well, she said you know how busy things have been with Quinn's engagement. Planning takes energy. Translation, your life is an afterthought. I tried to keep my voice level. Can we talk about the wedding invitations? Dad sighed sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. Liv, are we really still on that you didn't come? You didn't call. You didn't even ask why. Because you never told us you were getting married, Mom snapped. You sent some last-minute letter and expected us to rearrange our lives. I sent invitations, I said, months in advance. Dad's voice sharpened. If you didn't get a response, why didn't you follow up? Adults communicate. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, because this wasn't confusion. This wasn't miscommunication. This was blame. The third escalation came from the one place I tried to shield from them, my work. In June, Dad contacted me about a landscape project for a residential development outside Boston. It was a big multi-phase long contract, good visibility. He sounded encouraging on the phone, even complimentary. I want you to take the lead, he'd said. It's time you had something substantial under your belt. I hung up, glowing, stupidly hopeful. A week later, I saw a post from one of Quinn's influencer friends, a video tour of the exact same development. Her giggling voice saying, so excited to collaborate with Hart Properties on this beautiful project. I'll be designing all the outdoor spaces. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. I called Dad. He didn't answer. I called Mom, straight to voicemail. I texted Quinn. Did you take the project Dad offered me? Her reply came instantly. Relax. It's business. You can handle the small stuff. I need the exposure. My hands shook. I showed Noah the message. He stared at the screen, expression going unreadably flat. Liv, he said quietly, this isn't favoritism anymore. It's theft. I laughed, but it came out brittle. It's always been this way. No, he said, not like this. I didn't know it at the time, but that project would become one of the leverage points that would later make the entire Hart Foundation crack. By July, the escalations were no longer subtle. Quinn FaceTimed me one afternoon, her face gleaming under ring light. I was knee-deep in a rooftop garden installation, hands dirty, hair tied back under the sun. You look earthy, she said, wrinkling her nose. Anyway, quick question. Are you ever going to have like a real wedding? Mom said yours was cute, but it wasn't exactly what I asked. She smiled sweetly. Elegant. I mean, it was basically a backyard thing, right? No wonder they were worried about traveling all the way for that. My pulse thudded in my ears. They didn't know because they never saw the invitations. She blinked innocently. Then you should have sent a reminder. You know they forget things. You can't rely on one delivery. I stared at her face, smooth-lit, perfectly composed, and for the first time I saw the truth. She wasn't confused. She wasn't protecting anyone. She was enjoying this. She ended the call with a laugh, saying, Anyway, don't feel bad. You're married now. Just don't make my engagement about you, okay? My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. That night, after I told Noah everything, he didn't respond right away. He just sat on the edge of the bed, thinking, tapping his thumb quietly against his knee. Liv, he said finally, what if we really check? Check what I whispered. If the invitations ever made it past the front door, he said, if the email excuses make sense, if the system logs line up, if my family erased it on purpose, I finished. Noah nodded once firmly. I can look into the network, the security system, Evelyn's email filters. If you still have admin access. I do, I whispered. I set everything up when Dad built the house. I'm still listed on the documentation. He met my eyes, and I could see it, the shift in him, from comfort to strategy. I won't dig without your permission, he said, but if you want the truth, I can find it. My stomach dropped with a mixture of terror and relief, because part of me had always known. Do it, I breathed. I need to know. I didn't know it then, but saying those 2 words was the moment everything started to unravel. Noah started that same night. He sat at the dining table with his laptop open, glasses sliding down the bridge of his nose. The cool blue light turning the room into something colder, sharper. I stood behind him, arms wrapped around myself, feeling like I was watching someone open doors I'd spent years pretending weren't there. "Okay," he murmured, fingers flying. "Your father's system is old. No updates in 2 years. That's already concerning." He clicked again. "Still has the same administrator." "Me," I whispered. "Yeah, which means I can legally access this as long as you authorize it." He glanced up. "Do you?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." "All right," he said. "Let's start simple." Logs from the security system. Lines of code zipped upward. Noah leaned closer. Front door camera, February 12th. My breath caught. The day the package was delivered, he tapped a few keys. The footage still wasn't there, only a list of coded entries. But then cam 01 XT FD0 21220, motion detected 10:14:22 a.m. Cam 01 EXT FD0 21220, video saved 10:14:23 a.m. "Okay," he said softly. "There's footage." He clicked again, saving the entire file to an external drive. And then he moved to the next system. "Let's check Evelyn's email." I almost stopped him. Something about the idea made my stomach feel hollow. "I don't want to invade her privacy," I murmured. Noah reached for my hand. "You're not invading anything. You were set up as the backup on her account years ago. She approved it. This is your access." I nodded, heart pounding. He typed one more command and the settings opened. The inbox itself was closed, but the filters were visible. Rows and rows of rules, most harmless. And then one line made everything inside me go silent. "Filter name wedding block if subject contains wedding and Olivia. Delete permanently." I stared at the words. The creation date, February 14th, 2 days after the invitations arrived. Noah kept scrolling. There's more. Another filter. Older, years older. My pulse stumbled in my throat. Filter name scholarship notices, archive delete. Wait, I breathed. What is that? He clicked to expand it. The rule triggered whenever words like fellowship award scholarship or application status appeared, especially if they included my name. Email notifications that would have gone to my parents when I was in high school, letting them know I'd been selected for programs, recommendations, opportunities, deleted, erased, gone before I ever saw them. A metallic taste filled my mouth. "No," I whispered. "No, that can't be right. Why would they?" Noah's voice was soft but steady. "You always wondered why none of your counselors followed up when you didn't apply. Why you never heard back from the design program director even though you were on their finalist list." He shook his head. "Liv, it wasn't you." I pressed a hand over my mouth. It felt like the floor had tilted, like my entire childhood had just cracked through the center. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't know they were doing that." "Of course you didn't," Noah murmured. "You trusted them." The word trust felt like a bruise. He kept digging because I told him to. Because at that point I needed everything. The whole truth. No more shadows. No more pretending that the small wrongs weren't connected to something much darker underneath. The next discovery was almost quiet compared to the rest. A simple spreadsheet stored in a shared folder between Dad and Leonard Blake. I recognized it immediately. Dad's project list. His handwriting scanned in the corner. Little notes scribbled next to each item, but beside my name they had written emotionally reactive. Not reliable under pressure. Recommend Quinn for public-facing roles. My throat closed. Noah read it twice, lips pressed into a thin line. They used your supposed instability to justify giving Quinn everything. Another scribble read, Liv's architecture focuses inconsistent, not ideal for large-scale clients. That's not even true, I whispered. I know, Noah said, and so do they. He clicked again, and here's the kicker. A line highlighted in yellow, wedding invite confusion, assume exaggerated. Defer discussion until after Blake merger. Exaggerated. They thought I imagined my own wedding, or worse, they wanted Leonard to think that. My vision blurred. I felt Noah's hand at my back. Hey, he whispered. You don't have to keep reading. But I did, because the slow burn cruelty of my family suddenly made sense in a single horrifying way. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was systematic. Every opportunity I lost, every moment I was overlooked, every time they acted like I was dramatic, emotional, overreacting. It was designed. I straightened. Open the security footage. He hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. The file loaded. Grainy at first, then sharp. The front door. Snow on the steps. A FedEx truck pulling up, a driver carrying a small blue package. He rang the bell. 30 seconds passed. Then Quinn appeared. Ponytail, athleisure set, perfect makeup. She smiled at the driver, signed, took the package, and then without hesitation walked to the recycling bins on the side of the house. She didn't even check what it was. She didn't pause. She didn't think. She just threw it in, wiped her hands on her leggings, and walked back inside. The video ended. I stared at the black screen until I felt something inside me split open quietly, cleanly, like fabric tearing. It wasn't hurt. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. She wanted to erase me, I whispered. Not just the wedding, me. Noah turned his chair to face me fully. Liv, you know what this is, right? I nodded slowly. A pattern. A pattern, he repeated. Sabotage, manipulation. And your parents let it happen. They didn't just let it happen, I said. They built their lives around it. He reached for my hands. We can take this to a lawyer, he said. We can make them answer for what they did. I shook my head. A surprising calm washed over me. I don't want court. I don't want police. Not unless they force my hand. What do you want? I looked at him, and the answer settled inside me like cold stone. I want them to see it, I said softly. Every lie, every smear, every digital stain they thought they could hide. Noah nodded once like he had expected that answer all along. Then we prepare. The next 2 weeks became something I never expected: strategy. Not rage, not begging, not hoping, planning. Noah created backup files of everything. 3 encrypted drives, a cloud server under a burner email, physical printed summaries in a sealed envelope. This isn't paranoia, he told me. It's insurance. I created a timeline every moment from the first invitation to the last text message. Everything Quinn said, everything my parents dismissed, every call, every silence, every cut. The more pieces I laid out, the more the story stopped looking like tragedy and started looking like a blueprint. Not of a broken family, of a system designed to keep me in second place. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't unstable. I was unwanted. And the moment I accepted that truth, something inside me clicked into place, a cold, sharp focus I didn't know I possessed. Noah noticed it too. You're different, he said one night, brushing hair from my face. Not colder, just clearer. I nodded, because now I know what I'm walking into. The Hart Christmas Eve engagement dinner was announced in late November. A glossy invitation arrived for Noah and me, gold lettering, embossed edges. All the luxury they withheld from me for years suddenly poured into Quinn's celebration. Noah lifted the envelope, raising an eyebrow. Here it is, he murmured. I held the invitation between my fingers. The heavy cardstock, the gold foil, the faint scent of expensive paper. I'm going, I said quietly. Not to fight, not to cry, not to beg. Just to show them what they built. And after I said, I walk out. Noah studied my face, then nodded. Then I'll be ready. The week before Christmas, we rehearsed the sequence. Not lines, not comebacks, just facts. When they deny the invitations, Noah prompted. I show the signature. When they accuse you of misremembering, I show the email filter. When Quinn lies, I show the footage. And if they try to bury it again, I looked at him and felt a cold smile form. Then I bury the merger. He nodded like he'd expected that too. The night before we flew to Boston, he handed me a small device, slim, black, almost weightless. What is it? I asked. A silent remote trigger, he said. One tap and the TV in the Hart dining room goes to the desktop I've preloaded. And if the Wi-Fi fails, it won't, he said. But if it does, I have a hotspot in my pocket. I looked at him, overwhelmed. You're doing all this for me? He smiled softly. No, I'm doing it with you. The next morning, we boarded a plane under a gray Denver sky. Clouds pressed against the windows. The air felt sharp, like the world itself was bracing. Somewhere over the Midwest, I rested my forehead against the cold glass and whispered to myself, they won't see me coming. But the truth was even sharper. They never saw me at all. Snow was already gathering on the stone steps when Noah and I walked up to the Hart estate on Christmas Eve. The wreath on the door was bigger than last year. Layers of ribbon, white roses, strings of glittering lights. Quinn had filmed a whole unboxing about it, bragging that it cost more than some people's rent. The kind of detail that would have humiliated me once. Now it felt like part of the stage. Inside the house glowed with warm lights and expensive arrangements of winter roses. Guests filled the foyer, coats being handed off, champagne being poured by servers in crisp white shirts. Someone was laughing near the staircase, sharp, practiced laughter that made the air feel thinner. Noah brushed his hand against mine as we stepped over the threshold. You good, he whispered. I'm steady, I murmured back. Finally. We walked into the dining room where the long mahogany table had been set like a magazine cover. Crystal glasses folded napkins like origami gold chargers under each plate. The chandelier above us cast bright diamonds across the room. Mom spotted us first. She smiled a controlled, camera-ready smile. Olivia, she said, brushing invisible dust from her dress as she approached. You made it. Dad gave me a nod from near the wet bar. Not warm, not cold. Just a nod as if I were a colleague he vaguely recognized. Leonard Blake stood beside him, his posture stiff, his eyes scanning the room with the caution of a man who knew he was walking into an emotional minefield, but didn't yet know where the explosives were buried. Then Quinn swept in. Her gown shimmered under the chandelier's soft rose gold silk that floated when she moved. Her hair was curled into effortless waves. Her smile was bright enough to burn. Well, she said, pulling me into a cold, perfumed hug. Look who decided to join the family again. Noah's eyes flicked to mine. A warning. Stay calm. I wouldn't miss your big night, I said, voice smooth. Her eyes sparkled with triumph. She had no idea she was walking into a storm she'd created with her own hands. Dinner began with forced politeness and heavy silverware clinking against china. Servants refilled glasses. The fire crackled behind us. Mason sat beside Quinn, stiff as stone, his jaw tight whenever she spoke. I wondered if he sensed something was wrong, or if he'd been living with that discomfort for months. Finally, Quinn cleared her throat and tapped her glass lightly. Okay, before dessert, she said brightly, I have a little gift for my sister. Everyone turned toward me. My heartbeat didn't spike. It just slowed steady cold, like preparing for surgery. Quinn reached under the table and lifted a cream-colored box wrapped in a pink satin bow. I didn't touch it. She reached across the table and placed it in front of me with exaggerated care. Open it, she said. The sweetness in her voice spreading like poison. I lifted the lid. There it was. A sparkly membership card to Last Shot Love, an app for women who don't want to die alone, and a glossy book, How to Find Happiness When You Grow Old Alone. A ripple of laughter moved around the table. Mom smiled into her wine. Dad rubbed his thumb along the rim of his glass like he was bored. Even a few guests chuckled. Only Mason didn't laugh. He stared at Quinn like he was seeing something he didn't want to admit was real. Quinn leaned forward. Just a little push, Liv. You know, since nothing's happening in your love life. My voice was soft when it finally came out, but something did happen. She blinked. What? I lifted my eyes, meeting hers directly. I got married. The room froze. Forks paused midair. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Someone coughed, then stopped halfway through the sound. Mom set her wine glass down too quickly. Crystal hit wood with a sharp click. I'm sorry, she said slowly. What did you say? I've been married for 8 months, I repeated. You all missed the wedding. Dad barked a laugh, strangled sharp, ugly. Oh, come on, Liv, not tonight. Mom's lips thinned. This is childish, Olivia. Don't ruin your sister's engagement dinner. I'm not lying, I said, and Noah and I got married in March. A murmur swept through the room. Someone whispered, Is she serious? Quinn straightened, that influencer bright smile fading. You're doing this to embarrass me, she said. Classic Liv making everything about you. She turned to Mason. She's just jealous. But Mason didn't look convinced. He looked curious. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making silverware jump. If you got married, why didn't you tell us? He demanded. I did, I said. I sent invitations. Mom scoffed. That's a lie. No, I said. What's a lie is pretending you never saw them. The air tightened. Quinn's fingers wrapped slowly around her wineglass knuckles, whitening. Stop, she said under her breath. Stop right now. But I was past stopping. Under the table, my thumb clicked the small black device Noah gave me. Across the room, the giant flat-screen TV flickered. The crackling fireplace video vanished, replaced by a blue desktop screen. The guests gasped. Leonard's eyebrows shot up. Dad stood. Turn that off. I can't, I said quietly, but Noah can. Noah leaned back in his chair, totally calm, hands folded. Quinn's voice cracked. What are you doing? I'm showing the truth, I said. The cursor moved on the screen. A folder titled Project Verity opened. The first image appeared: FedEx delivery confirmation, signature line Q, heart, timestamp, February 12th, 10:22 M. Mom's face drained of color. Quinn signs for plenty of packages, she snapped. That means nothing. Then let's look at your email, I said. Quinn choked. No, wait. But it was too late. The next screenshot filled the screen. Filter name wedding block, created by QH Action, delete permanently. Gasps exploded through the room. Mason turned his head slowly toward Quinn. You did this? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. No, this is taken out of context. Out of context, I repeated softly. Then let's add some. The cursor clicked again. The TV switched to video. Front door camera, snow, FedEx truck, driver handing over the package, and Quinn walking out smiling, signing, taking the blue box, then turning, walking to the recycling bins, throwing the unopened box inside with a careless flick of her wrist. The silence afterward was suffocating. Quinn stood up so fast her chair screeched. I was protecting Mom and Dad from what I asked. My wedding existence. She shook her head wildly. It was a cheap vineyard wedding. It would have embarrassed the family. Mason stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. You threw away your sister's wedding invitations, he said slowly, then lied about it for 8 months. That's not what happened. Leonard Blake stood. His voice was low, lethal. Is that the kind of family I'm about to merge my company with? Dad swallowed hard. Leonard, let's step into another room. No, Leonard said. Everything I need to know is right here. Quinn turned on me, tears streaming, but eyes full of venom. This is your fault, she hissed. You're jealous. You're pathetic. You're enough, I said. She froze. My voice wasn't loud, just sharp enough to cut. You tried to erase me, I said. And when that didn't work, you tried to humiliate me. But you forgot something, Quinn. What? She spat. I build systems, I said. And you left a trail in everyone. Mason pulled the engagement ring off her finger. The diamond caught one last glitter of chandelier light before he set it on the table between them. We're done, he said quietly. I don't marry someone who destroys her own sister. Quinn stared at the ring, trembling. Mom stood abruptly. This is getting out of hand. Leonard turned toward my parents. You raised a daughter who sabotages family, and you protected her. There will be no merger. Dad paled. Leonard, please no, Leonard said. It ends here. Quinn collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad looked like the floor had fallen out beneath him. I stood, slow, calm. Quinn looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You're going to ruin me, she whispered. No, I said. I don't need to. You did that yourself. She flinched like I'd struck her. I reached for the cream-colored box she'd given me, the insult wrapped in ribbon, and walked it back to her. I set it gently in front of her shaking hands. Keep it, I said. You need it far more than I ever did. Then I straightened and looked at both of my parents. For years, I said quietly, you taught me that silence keeps the peace, that shrinking myself made the family stronger, that my pain was just immaturity. Tonight you saw the truth you spent decades hiding. Mom's lips trembled. Olivia, wait, no, I said. I'm done waiting. I walked out of the dining room, through the foyer, past the sweeping staircase where we used to take Christmas photos, past the polished floors that reflected a version of family we never actually were. When my hand touched the front door handle, I heard Dad call my name, not gently, not lovingly, just afraid. I didn't turn around. The door closed behind me with a heavy thud, an ending, a beginning, and a final verdict all at once. Snow hit my face as I stepped into the night, cold, sharp, alive. Noah followed me out a moment later, his coat already in his arms. You did it, he murmured. I exhaled a long, trembling breath I felt all the way down to my bones. They finally saw me, I said. Not the daughter they invented. Me? He took my hand. And that's just the beginning. Behind us, the Hart estate glowed in the snow like a beautiful shell, ornate, polished, and empty on the inside. Ahead of us, the driveway stretched out into darkness. I chose the darkness because it was mine. 3 days after the Christmas Eve disaster, a FedEx truck rolled up to our little Denver duplex like the universe hadn't shifted. The sky was flat gray snowmelt dripping from the gutters. I watched from the kitchen window with a dish towel in my hand. The driver dropped a flat box on the porch and left without knocking. Noah glanced up from his laptop. You expecting anything, he asked. No, I said, not from anyone who sends overnight guilt. We both knew it was from my father before I even opened the door. Hart Properties' letterhead was taped across the top. Inside, a check so thick it almost bowed the paper. $50,000. Beneath it, a single printed note, for Olivia, to help you move on. We all said things we regret. Let's agree not to involve outsiders or the press. Love, Dad. No handwriting, no apology, just a price. Noah came to stand beside me, reading over my shoulder. What does it feel like, he asked. Like hush money, I said. Like buying a rug big enough to shove a crime scene under. For 1 second, I pictured what that money could do. Pay off my car, expand my studio. Then I remembered the empty chairs at my wedding, and the way they'd stared me down at the engagement dinner and called me a liar. I tore the check straight down the middle, then again and again until the counter was covered in white scraps. My hand stayed steady the whole time. I spread the pieces out, took a photo, and opened the group chat that had been a one-way street for years. Mom, Dad, Quinn. I typed, I don't sell my silence. Consider it my last gift to you. Do not contact me again. I attached the picture and hit send. The little typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. I didn't wait to see what excuse they were about to write. I scrolled to the top, tapped leave conversation, and when my phone asked, are you sure? I smiled. Yes. By New Year's Eve, that quiet was full of a different kind of noise. Noah's parents' house outside Seattle smelled like laundry soap. Rain drummed on the roof. His sister's kids were fighting over a remote grape juice bleeding into the carpet, while 3 adults shouted and no one mentioned the rug. Olivia Sit, Noah's mom, called. You're making me tired just standing there. I sat. She tossed a blanket over my knees like she'd done it 100 times. Later, she pressed a velvet box into my hand. This was my mother's, she said. Inside was a sapphire brooch, deep blue and stubborn. I kept waiting for a special occasion. Turns out the occasion is just loving someone. Are you sure you want me to have this? I asked. She pinned it to my sweater. Your family, she said. That's the reason. Just before midnight, Noah pulled me onto the back porch. The air smelled like wet cedar and faint fireworks. The Space Needle glowed through the mist. You think they'll let it go? He asked. Your parents. Quinn? I watched the dark line of trees at the edge of the yard. They'll rewrite it, I said. In their version, I'm ungrateful and dramatic. The unstable one who ruined Christmas. In their version, he said they don't have the receipts. I let out a small cold laugh. In their version, I agreed they don't know how much I kept. He looked at me. More than the video. Project spreadsheets, I said. Emails calling me unreliable. Old filters that killed scholarships. Drafts where Dad wonders if cutting me off is simpler. Noah's jaw tightened. You've got enough to burn the place down. I don't want to, I said. I walked out. That should be it. And if they come for you anyway, I touched the brooch at my collarbone, feeling its weight. Then I stopped playing nice, I said. I don't just turn on the lights. I open every door and invite the world in. They wanted me gone. They never imagined I'd leave carrying the blueprint for how to bring the whole house down. Inside, somebody started a chaotic countdown. 10, 9, 8 voices, overlapping, kids shouting. I listened to the sound of people who'd chosen me on purpose. People who loved loud and messy. People who would never carve pieces off my life and call it protection. 3, 2, 1. The living room exploded in cheers. A party horn blared. Someone spilled champagne and laughed. Noah kissed me, not to make a point, not to prove anything, just because he could. For the first time, I stepped into a new year with no unread messages from my parents waiting, and no quiet prayer that maybe this year they'd finally see me. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the woman who walked away before their house collapsed, and who still held the match just in case. If they ever come for me again, I won't just survive it,